Hello friends. Under the hood of the fourth Pajero, there are gasoline-aspirated engines with a working volume of 3.0 liters, 6G72, 178 horsepower, and 3.8 liters, 6G75 with 250 horsepower, as well as a turbo diesel with a capacity of 3.2 liters, 4D41, 170 horsepower, and 200 horsepower since 2009. In the Pajero IV, imported from the Gulf countries, you can find petrol 3.8 liters, very rare, and 3.5 liters, 6G74 with 202 horsepower. The 3-liter gasoline unit in the line of engines has the most innocent biography. It is characterized as the simplest, most reliable, and enduring. In addition, he easily digests the 90-second gasoline. True, the dynamics of an SUV with such an engine leaves much to be desired, but off-road it is not so important. Petrol 3.5 liters in terms of reliability is also not reputed to be capricious. But the impressive mass for 202 horses is still not enough. The flagship 3.8 liter with the Myvec variable valve timing system gives the Mitsubishi Pajero IV decent dynamics. The engine is generally reliable, no surprises, but it was not without one unpleasant moment. In the period from February 1st to May 21st of 2008, a software failure occurred on the assembly line of motors of the TR series. As a result, the robot installed crankshaft bearings smaller than the required size. Effects: complaints of owners about knocking in the engine and the replacement of the short block or the entire engine under warranty. More often, the problem manifested itself after 10 to 20,000 kilometers, but it could show up later after 40 to 70,000 kilometers. The symptoms of the disease were knocks, which are distinguishable with an increase in speed over 1,000 to 1,500 RPM, similar to the sound of a secant exhaust. Oddly enough, but with similar symptoms, individual copies of 2007, with a mileage of more than 100,000 kilometers, fell on the operating table of the engine engineers. The diagnosis is oil starvation and turning the crankshaft liners. It was possible to return the engine to life after replacing the crankshaft and liners. After 80 to 120,000 kilometers, the operation of the Myvec system could be accompanied by excessive noise and rattling, distinguishable with an increase in speed. This is a feature of the system, and noise does not progress with increasing mileage. Several copies with a 3.8-liter engine fell victim to intake manifold flaps. They fell into the cylinders due to loose screws. This problem is familiar to third-generation Pajero owners with the same engine. As a preventive measure, the damper mounting screws can be put on thread sealant. With high mileage, the flagship 3.8 can start consuming a lot of engine oil. Often, it is enough to update the valve stem seals. In extreme cases, you have to change the stuck rings. Gasoline units have a timing belt drive with a recommended replacement interval of 90,000 kilometers. With a run of more than 120 to 150,000 kilometers, a radiator may leak. Catalysts serve over 150 to 200,000 kilometers. Turbo diesel 4D41 is demanding on the quality of diesel fuel. The first problems may appear after 60 to 100,000 kilometers. The reason is the failure of the high-pressure fuel pump valve or pipes clogged with soot connecting the sensor on the fuel filter bracket to the intake manifold. At the same time, check, ASC off lights up, traction decreases, and when shifting gears, the box twitches. Injectors, as a rule, go over 200,000 kilometers. A little earlier, you may need to clean the EGR valve. With a run of more than 120 to 150,000 kilometers, the upper damper and chain tensioner often gave up. Pajero IV gearboxes are reliable, and there are no complaints about them. Automatic requires an oil change with a filter change every 60 to 90,000 kilometers. Some owners note the appearance of shocks on a warm automatic transmission when switching from third to fourth gear and back, usually after 100 to 150,000 kilometers. These symptoms do not develop and there are no malfunctions. After 150 to 200,000 kilometers, an automatic transmission inhibitor, selector position sensor, may require attention. Usually, the sensor needs to be cleaned and lubricated. Rarely, you have to buy a new one. The Mitsubishi Pajero's signature feature is the backlash of the cardan in the rear gearbox. At the same time, when you release or press the gas, a knock is heard. The disease is acoustic and does not affect the durability of the transmission. To eliminate the knock, you will need to replace the rear gearbox and drive shaft, which is very expensive. Yes, and there is no guarantee that after 20 to 30,000 kilometers the knock will not appear again. Over time, the rear gear begins to howl, but again, there is no reason for concern, another feature. The combination of ASC off, ESP signals, and a flashing transfer case in most cases is the result of a battery voltage drop. The front gearbox is quite strong, but still some owners managed to lay it on a hard off-road. Sometimes the front-wheel drive enable sensor fails. Owners of brand new Mitsubishi Pajero IV often noted vibration during acceleration, disappearing after 10 to 30,000 kilometers. So the transmission units were run in. On aged machines, it is periodically necessary to eliminate transmission leaks due to worn oil seals. The first suspension element to be replaced is the front anti-roll bar bushings. Their service life is 25 to 40,000 kilometers. In addition, they are often the source of creaking in the front suspension. The stabilizer struts go a little longer, 50 to 70,000 kilometers. The bushings and struts of the rear stabilizer serve more than 120 to 150,000 kilometers. Wheel bearings are handed over after 100 to 150,000 kilometers. Pajero IV front shock absorbers run more than 80 to 100,000 kilometers, rear more than 100 to 120,000 kilometers. Often, the silent blocks in the front shock absorbers give up earlier than the shock absorber itself. In order not to change the shock absorber, you can get by with repressing the silent block. The ball bearings of the front levers reach 150 to 180,000 kilometers, and the silent blocks of the front levers up to 150 to 200,000 kilometers. About the same amount nursed ball bearings and the silent blocks of the rear levers. Soured adjusting bolts are a common surprise when trying to adjust the camber on cars older than 3 to 4 years. The surprise originates from the third Pajero. Well, if the bolts are soured at the permissible values of the wheel alignment angles. If not, then for a start you can try to soak the soured bolts. Didn't help, so you have to cut the bolts. To avoid surprises in the future, it is better to lubricate the adjusting bolts. Cases of loss of control over the car and overturning at speed due to the destruction of the rear camber lever are alarming. Fortunately, the incidents have so far been isolated. The defect is typical for the levers of the well-known and respected manufacturer of spare parts, Massam. Perhaps the installed levers were fake. The steering rack starts to rattle after 100 to 150,000 kilometers. Most often, the cause of knocking is the backlash of the glass pressing the worm shaft against the rail. It is diagnosed by the backlash of the steering rod in the up-down direction. Tightening the rail will help to correct the situation for a short time. Over time, a creak appears in the area of the anther of the steering shaft on the floor. After lubrication of the assembly, the squeak disappears. The beating of brake discs with a run of more than 20 to 30,000 kilometers is a common phenomenon, well known to the owners of the Pajero III. Sometimes it is possible to get rid of the beating after turning the discs, but there is no guarantee that it will not appear again soon. It is better to replace the brake discs with better analogs. After 100 to 120,000 kilometers, it will not be superfluous to revise the calipers, which most likely are already starting to wedge due to souring of the guides. Another common disease is ringing parking brake pads. It is treated by installing springs from the parking brake of the previous Pajero. Due to the chafing of the ABS wiring insulation by the rear left boot of the drive, the ABS, ASC off, and slippery road warning lights may be displayed. With a run of more than 100 to 120,000 kilometers, there was a failure of the brake accumulator. The paintwork of the body of the Mitsubishi Pajero IV is quite soft and unstable to external influences. Over time, many scratches and chips are found, which in addition begin to bloom. More often, the first spiders appear on the tailgate and the bar separating the glass of the rear door. Small pockets of corrosion also occur under the door seal on the window frame. This is another legacy of the third Pajero. The caps of the hub nuts and the frame of the spare wheel cover are also susceptible to corrosion. Cannot resist the brown plague and the fuel tank, all thanks to the dirt accumulating in the space between the bottom of the tank and its protection. Many Pajero IV owners note insufficient body rigidity. This is confirmed by the abrasions of the doorways that appear on cars older than 4 to 6 years. In addition, doors slam on potholes and dust gets into the cabin through the seals. Installing an additional seal or strengthening the native will help correct the situation. Over time, corrosion occurs on the rear wheel arches and in places of abrasions. Another design feature is the dangling right taillight. The reason is the development on the piston of the lantern attachment. A huge windshield often attracts stones like a magnet. Sometimes in wet weather, the glass of the fog lights burst. On Pajeros older than 5 to 6 years, equipped with a sunroof, there are problems with the drive mechanism. It is only sold as a set with sunroof. With a run of more than 100 to 130,000 kilometers, the thrust of the rear headlight corrector sensor often requires replacement due to a soured hinge. With a run of more than 60 to 90,000 kilometers, it starts to creak, and after 100 to 120,000 kilometers, the front wiper trapezoid may fail. The rear windshield wiper does its job extremely poorly. The power front seats may not adjust forward or backward due to worn motor brushes. Over time, the front seats begin to creak. The leather trim of the seats quickly loses its commodity appearance, and on the side of the driver's seat it is completely torn. Soon, the skin on the steering wheel also goes bald. On Pajero IVs older than 5 to 6 years, the stock cable of wires is often frayed. At the same time, the horn stops working, and the airbag malfunction lamp lights up. Problems with interior cooling can be caused by a radiator clogged with road dust or rotten rear air conditioning pipes. Aggressive road environment kills them in 3 to 6 years. Many, having decided to save money, simply jam the rear circuit. Along the way, the tubes of the rear row heater also suffer. An electric fan for cooling the air conditioner radiator can also fail. Electricity usually does not cause any problems. If you know of other model malfunctions, be sure to write about it.